Hello, my name is Alexa Delwich, and I am co-founder and executive director of the Center for Good Food Purchasing. Today, I'll be sharing an overview of our food system recovery roadmap, which reflects insights, observations, and themes gleaned from communities involved in our Good Food Purchasing program and their experiences addressing the many challenges brought upon by the COVID-19 pandemic. The roadmap includes recommended actions and investments needed to accelerate community-driven food systems transformation over the next decade. Let's begin with a quick overview of the Center for Good Food Purchasing. We use the power of procurement to create a transparent and equitable food system that prioritizes the health and well-being of people, animals, and the environment. We do this through the nationally networked adoption and implementation of the Good Food Purchasing program by major institutions. Procurement is a powerful lever to advance equity and build wealth in underserved communities. Food procurement is no different. Institutions like schools, hospitals, and jails spend billions of dollars a year on food, but most institutions have no idea where their food is coming from or how it's produced. The Good Food Purchasing program offers a metric-based framework, tools, and support to ensure that our public food dollars are invested in a food system that promotes healthy and thriving communities, good jobs, local producers, environmental stewardship, and animal welfare, and is rooted in the principles of equity, transparency, and accountability. Our interconnected goals are to inspire more and more institutions to adopt the program, increase their purchases of good food, drive market change through the aggregate demand of institutions for good food, and build a movement strong enough to transform the food system. For some quick history on the Center for Good Food Purchasing, the Good Food Purchasing policy was created by the Los Angeles Food Policy Council in 2011. In 2012, the policy was adopted by the City of Los Angeles and Los Angeles Unified School District, and the Good Food Purchasing program was developed to support institutions like LA Unified School District in their implementation of the policy. As interest in the program emerged from across the country as people noticed what was happening in Los Angeles, the Center for Good Food Purchasing was created to manage and house the growing Good Food Purchasing program. The program has steadily grown over the last 6 years. We now work with 23 cities and 10 states, plus DC. In total, we're working with 57 public institutions, which represent school districts, municipal agencies, jails, hospitals, and universities, among others. And in total, the Good Food Purchasing framework impacts over $1 billion in annual food purchases. Our work is partnership driven. In every city where we work, we're invited in by the community, and we partner with cross-sector community-based coalitions, institutions, policymakers, and value chain businesses to ensure that the work is grounded in and supports local priorities. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the long-standing inequities and vulnerabilities in our food system. And while public awareness about how the food system was failing to meet our needs grew, we saw people across the country step forward to play a vital role in alleviating the crisis. These efforts, the individuals, groups, and institutions who stepped up to feed their communities, organize mutual aid networks, and channel resources toward the most vulnerable became our roadmap for a post-pandemic food system. Using public procurement as our focus, the roadmap is informed by the learnings and conversations with our many partners across the country as they responded to the pandemic. It outlines 4 pillars for successful food system transformation: stories of leadership, innovation, and perseverance, and the recommended actions and investments needed to bring about this change. And I'll walk you through each of the pillars briefly. The first pillar focuses on the power of partnerships. We know that food system transformation through strategies like public food procurement is a long-term process. It's built on trust, relationships, and cross-sector collaboration. We've seen throughout the pandemic that the community-based networks and relationships that were already in place created the basis for a stronger and more coordinated response to the crisis. For example, in places with food policy directors embedded within local governments like in New York, Austin, Baltimore, Denver, and Washington, D.C., cities were able to quickly assemble a well-coordinated emergency response because of the well-established cross-sector relationships that spanned across local government, community-based organizations, businesses, and policymakers. Innovative emergency response value chain coordination emerged as a key strategy for communities. Leaders across sectors identified creative ways that they could divert regional food supplies to emergency food distribution, using unused kitchens and hiring unemployed food service workers to help feed food insecure or housebound people. Mission-driven food hubs like the Common Market were able to quickly pivot and redirect supply chains to areas of greatest need because of the existing relationships they had between local growers, community-based organizations, local government, and their regional food hubs. Philanthropy rose to meet the urgency of the moment by quickly dispersing unprecedented amounts of money to support these types of efforts. These relationships spanned across sectors, geographies, issues, and levels of influence. Scaling up values in our food system requires significant long-term investments in soft infrastructure. The people needed to coordinate across sector partners between the public, private, and civic sectors, such as paid staff for community-based coalitions, BIPOC and worker-led leadership, senior-level food policy directors within local government to help connect the dots across government agencies, as well as work closely with the community. Other key functions include values-based procurement specialists to help connect institutions with values-aligned producers, as well as funding for training, outreach, and professional development opportunities to identify and overcome barriers for producers and businesses typically left out of institutional markets. The second pillar focuses on developing shared goals within cities and the hard infrastructure needed to achieve those goals. Cities can use their leadership and convening power to bring together the largest anchor institutions to collectively set aggregate purchasing targets to support community health, local economies, businesses and farmers of color, environmental and climate goals, fair labor practices, and animal welfare. An example of this approach is happening in New York City. The Mayor's Office of Food Policy has convened the 7 city food purchasing agencies that collectively spend $300 million a year on food around the Good Food Purchasing Framework. And they're working with institutions and a community-based coalition to establish a shared vision, quantifiable targets in the 5 values, and a collective strategy to support those goals. And this is all articulated in their recently released Food Forward NYC, a 10-year food policy plan. To meet those targets, public and private investment in regional food system infrastructure is critical. Public investment in regional processing, aggregation, storage, distribution, and well-staffed kitchens are necessary pieces to create more resilient and equitable regional food systems. The state of Massachusetts developed a $36 million food security infrastructure grant program in response to recommendations from the administration's COVID-19 Food Security Task Force is an excellent example of this type of support. As cities and anchor institutions commit to quantifiable collective targets in the value categories, commitments to supply chain transparency, third-party verification, public input, and annual reporting are critical components also for sharing progress on goals and communities being able to hold their institutions accountable to their commitments. Finally, financial incentives for institutions committed to purchasing good food can help to ensure that these institutions have enough resources to pay the true value of food. The third pillar focuses on transformational policies at the local level, like multi-year community-driven action and climate action plans, with economic and racial equity at their core. Many good food purchasing coalitions and other community-based networks responded to the emergency with COVID-19 specific short and long-term policy recommendations for their local governments, grounded in support for worker justice, racial equity, environmental sustainability, and transparency. A key recommendation across policy platforms is the creation of a dedicated position or positions within city government to focus on integrating food systems work across agencies and developing and enacting a comprehensive food vision and plan grounded in community. At the federal level, food and farm advocates worked in remarkable coordination, advancing recommendations for long-term structural reforms, and comprehensive support for workers, vulnerable communities, and small and mid-sized producers, guided by holistic platforms like those of the Heal Food Alliance. And finally, the fourth pillar is imagination. The leadership that we witnessed within and across communities all over the country this last year doesn't need to be a stopgap solution. It can be our 2030 roadmap if we act boldly together with our values and imagination as our guide. And let's imagine for a moment together what's possible. In 2023, in response to a coordinated mobilization of grassroots activists, policymakers, and civic leaders from across the country, the USDA expanded its school lunch program to include all children. The new program ensured that all public funds spent on school food aligned with good food values. As more and more students sought out high quality and culturally appropriate meals, participation in the school lunch program increased, and so did revenue. Schools invested additional revenue in purchasing from local BIPOC farmers, worker-owned cooperatives, and businesses prioritizing sustainable production practices, safe and fair working conditions, and high animal welfare standards. At the same time, the federal government, along with state and local leadership, recognized that in order to offer all children and our most vulnerable populations the highest quality meals they deserve, they must invest in the necessary infrastructure, public dollars for the public good. This meant well-staffed kitchens for scratch cooking, storage, packing, processing, distribution, washing, and waste management facilities that were funded through federal, state, and local public finance mechanisms. By 2025, cities and regions large and small across the United States had committed to setting regional good food purchasing targets across their anchor institutions. This dramatic expansion of values-based procurement commitments, along with dedicated support from local economic development departments, created a new and steady market for small and mid-sized producers and food businesses of color. With commitments to equity, transparency, and accountability front and center, communities were able to hold institutions accountable to their commitments and ensure that their taxpayer dollars were invested for the public and planetary good. At all levels of government, there was a recognition that food systems should restore and promote public health, equity, and sustainability. And they knew that to do this, public institutions needed more investment to pay the true value of food. They began to apply true cost accounting principles into decision-making at all levels of government. The necessary funds were committed, allowing institutions to invest their billions of taxpayer dollars into companies that paid their workers a living wage, provided health benefits and worker protections, food producers that protected our soils and waterways, and much, much more. By 2030, all public institutions across the country were committed to investing taxpayer dollars in a food system that fosters health, equity, and well-being. This radical transformation was happening all while advocates were organizing and winning landmark legislation at all levels of government. The U.S. Farm Bill substantially increased its support for local and regional food systems, funding research and implementation for diversified sustainable agriculture and aquaculture systems, and access to land and credit for BIPOC and beginning farmers. Soil health was prioritized and targets were set for drawdown of greenhouse gas emissions. Universal rights to healthcare, meaningful work, education, housing, and of course, good food became the norm. There were still many challenges, but our shared commitment to equity, well-being, and a sustainable future inspired us to continue tackling them with courage. The urgency of our collective work for food justice and transformation is now visible to a much broader set of stakeholders. This is enabling new partnerships and expanding the universe of possibility for systemic change. As many local government officials have said, we have a chance now to build back better. And with the new administration focused on the power of the federal government's purchasing power and supply chains as a driver for fixing food system inequity and the lack of resilience, there are new opportunities for big solutions that wouldn't have been possible even a few months ago when we released this roadmap. And I'll leave you with a quote from our report, which was actually our inspiration for it. It's from an Intercept video entitled "A Message from the Future." And it says, "Finally, we were entertaining solutions on the scale of the crises we face without leaving anyone behind. The first big step was just closing our eyes and imagining it. We can be whatever we have the courage to see." Thank you.